Hello everyone, Jason Gomes again. So I've been making a few videos this week to talk about consciousness and the rise in consciousness. So I want to try to explain a little bit more clearly the connection between light, sound, and consciousness. And to put it very simply, when you implode sound collecting upon itself, you get light. And when you implode light, you get sound. Also, when you look at sound harmonics, sound interacting with itself, you get patterns of matter. And when you have light interacting with itself, you get patterns of light, which we call thought, which is the idea that mind over matter and that the thought matrix is ultimately what's forming our reality around us. So we'll start with a short video about sonoluminescence, and I'll also include a link.
And you look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which can be seen with the unaided eye. It looked like a star in the heavens.
Seth Putterman called it the star in a jar, a tiny spot of bright light contained in a flask of liquid. This star in a jar is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave makes the bubble do something remarkable. First it expands, then it collapses. And this collapse happens so violently that vapor molecules trapped inside the bubble slam together and heat up so much that the bubble gives off an incredible burst of heat and light, several thousand times a second, giving the appearance of a star.
So there you have a depiction of how light put in a container, a round container like a universe, when you have diametrically opposing points of sound, you get an implosive force which creates luminosity. So light is actually created by sound. Now what's interesting is we live in a dielectric universe, meaning that you have counter-rotating magnetic fields which are nested inside of each other, which is producing the same effect. Now if we look at a Tesla coil, of course I get a commercial.
Hi, how can I help?
Sorry about that. I love Tesla coils, by the way. I don't know if you can see this very well, but I'll include a video link so that you can see this video as well for yourself. There's a whole bunch of videos for musical Tesla coils. The final countdown. But basically what you have with a Tesla coil is it expands a magnetic field from your secondary that's induced by the primary here, and it creates like a bubble. And when that bubble collapses, based on the frequency generator, all of the electromagnetic energy, all of the electrons that are pushed away from the Tesla coil come flooding back in, and they create these essentially linear paths. They're not quite straight because there's no such thing as a straight line in our universe, but what you're actually looking at is what happens when sound condenses so tightly that it then becomes linear because it has no more room to condense in on itself, which is how you get light from sound. So sound and light are actually connected, and what's more interesting perhaps than that is the fact that when you look at harmonics, so this plate is an example of a cymatic pattern. So the Hertz 3835 Hertz is the vibration that's coming from the center of this plate, that's traveling to the outside of the plate, and it's reflecting back to the inside of the plate, just as we know vibrations do. And they create points where they amplify the wave, these dark points where none of the sand is able to stand, and then there are points where the waves cancel each other out, and therefore the sand is accumulating there. Now these patterns are based on the geometry of the plate and the frequency of the vibration. So the higher the vibration, the more dense these patterns become, and at lower vibrations they're simpler patterns, but they work in cycles just like music does, and they create similar patterns of higher and higher states of complexity. So what you're looking at when you're talking about matter is sound creates these geometries, these patterns that we see throughout all of nature, in everything. And there's another video link that I'll include. It's People Are Cymatic. And the last thing that I actually wanted to show you in this video, to keep it as short and as sweet as possible, is the flower of life, which is how patterns of geometry arise out of simple spheres. So you get spheres that are intersecting from center to center, and then you start getting a greater and greater combination of spheres, and then as these spheres add up, you get point to point to point to point to point. So you create essentially the masculine aspect of the universe arising out of the feminine aspect. So linear motion is derived from these intersecting spheres. Now, these spheres could be black holes, these spheres could be solar systems, these spheres could be cells. It doesn't really matter. A sphere is a sphere is a sphere, and they all interact electromagnetically, whether you're talking about the cells of the sun or the center of a galaxy or your heart. All of these patterns, which are found throughout nature, are possible to create with something as simple as intersecting spheres. And so all of our platonic solids, which are the most stable geometries based on their waveforms, they collapse to create stability. Similarly to the way that cymatic patterns arise. So the flower of life is what this is called, and you also get Metatron's cube out of this, which is the collective geometry in all of nature. So this is actually the pattern that gives us three-dimensional geometry for every single shape, pattern, or function of creation. Now, if you were looking at this, you can actually find this symmetry within the human body. This is actually similar to what you would expect to see with the development of the embryo, where you have a doubling and then a doubling and then a doubling, and you create this geometry. So the idea behind this video is just to explain that sound and light are connected intrinsically because they're both vibrations. So sound vibrations imploding create light, light vibrations imploding create sound, sound resonance or harmonics create patterns of physical energy, which we call matter, and vibrational harmonics of the electromagnetic field create patterns which we refer to as thought. So it's the idea that these are the two functions that are happening in your body, is you have a physical pattern generator, which you call your heart, which is creating a cymatic impulse, which is actually powering your brain, which is formed by the dodecahedron. So when you look at the brain, your neurons actually use this same geometry to create an implosive field which is matching with phi. So essentially your brain is designed to see transdimensionally. So just larger and larger and larger dimensions. And it's designed to see these patterns and to compress electromagnetism into a single point in the pineal gland, the third eye, which is the seat of the soul, the human imagination. And it's basically the point that is most resonant with the planet itself, the Schumann resonance of the planet, the alpha wave in the brain, if you wanted to look at it from a scientific vantage point, is associated with calm, relaxation, and fluid creativity. So when people are existing in those states, they're channeled into their imagination and to the patterns of creation that are all around them and within them. So when you sit in a state of meditation and you essentially slow down your breathing, these patterns of creation, which are making your body every single moment of every day, become more harmonically resonant, meaning you have a higher state of integrity within your heart, meaning you're stronger physically, and you have a higher state of coherence within your brain, because these natural resonant patterns actually realign your neurons to align with the lowest point of resistance. So if you're inducing, like the Tesla coil, pulling in thoughts that are in a state of harmony, that harmony will actually reorganize the cellular structure of the neurons in your brain to more accurately reflect the harmonics of the universe, which is how we get a clear and concise perception of reality. It's how we see reality to its clearest degree. So just so that people understand, chanting is actually all about cymatics. It's about reinforcing the structures of the body through sound. Meditation is about essentially thought cymatics, which is reinforcing the neural structures in the brain, which are designed to be resonant with the universe outside of your body. They're designed to perfectly reflect all those patterns of creation down to the smallest degree, which is why the human imagination is so powerful. So as more and more people start becoming in tune with these patterns, start practicing things like yoga, which is the unity between the heart and the mind and the body, we're going to start having a lot more creative flow. The next generation of people are going to be operating from a much higher position of harmony and a much higher position of clarity. So that's my ultimate goal, is to set up this kind of education so that children in the future no longer have to worry about being programmed by the wrong people, because your brain is a biological supercomputer, and right now the wrong people are writing the programming. So this is essentially like a software upgrade so that you and your biological supercomputer that you call your body can start aligning with the universal harmony and energy which created it, rather than the dis-ease and exploitation, which is our current system of administration. So as more and more people come into alignment, not with my way of thinking, but with the natural way of energy flowing through the body in a natural state of harmony, more and more people are going to be acting more cohesively, more cooperatively, and more fluidly creative. So that's exciting. It's an exciting time. It's the transition from an internalized self to an externalized self, which is basically just a rise in compassion. It's connecting with things outside of you as you see the patterns that other people are comprised of are the same patterns that you're comprised of. It becomes very, very difficult to not feel connected to other people. It becomes very difficult to not be censoring and aware of people's emotional position and essentially their right to exist. That every single thing around you is being created by the same patterns of resonance, and the higher the state of harmony, the greater the state of integrity. So it's just bringing back that unity consciousness of the body, the heart, and the mind. So that's the idea of the Holy Trinity, is actually just bringing these things into alignment so that your mind is creating for yourself a body, and your heart is creating for yourself a mind that is in the highest state of harmony and the highest state of balance within yourself, and of course in harmony with things outside of yourself. So for me, it doesn't really matter what's happening outside of me, because I know the patterns of creation that are forming me. I know the energies that are flowing through me, and that's what I ultimately focus on. So when people like Donald Trump are up there speaking, it's not really that relevant, because he obviously is not a representation of universal harmony, as anybody with eyes or ears could see and hear. But the idea is, it doesn't matter who the leadership is. What should be leading every single human being is their heart, and when they're in a heart-centered state, the level of clarity in the mind will increase exponentially, and the ability to tap into the creative potential that's everywhere and in everything that exists in nature is going to be more available. So more and more people are going to be in a position to create things that are beautifully mastery level harmony, which is exactly what nature is. So more and more people tapping into the power and harmony of nature, and more people will be tapping into their own power and their own harmony, regardless of what's happening outside them. And when that happens, the level of cooperation will be unstoppable. So essentially, people will be unassailable. They will no longer feel disconnected from the universe. They will no longer feel disconnected from the planet. They will no longer feel disconnected from each other. And that's how these three dimensions are exploited. When you feel disconnected from the universe, when you feel disconnected with people, and when you feel disconnected with nature, that's where you really start to run into some problems. So right now is a time where we're going to be expanding in generosity, expanding in compassion, and expanding in harmony, and coming into an energetic alignment rather than a physical alignment with things that are not in an energetic alignment. So it's a very exciting time. I wanted to explain that a little bit more clearly so that people could understand what I'm saying when I say the patterns of creation, and that light thought is manifesting sound, just as it's doing right now. I'm having thoughts that are manifested into sound, which create changes within the physical patterns. As you hear that, it's vibrating your ears, and it's being compressed down into your pineal gland, which changes the thought. So light and sound are connected, sound and light are connected. They're the same thing, they're just vibrations of consciousness. The consciousness being the 0-point field being vibrated at a specific rate. That's all that we're looking at. So it's time for people to start waking up from the delusion of separation, because no matter how separate you think you are, you can never actually be separate from the geometry that's creating you, from the energy that's creating you. You can never separate sound and light. So that's how these things tie together, and I hope this answers some questions for people that are more spiritually inclined, that want to understand science as well, and for people that are scientifically inclined, that are accepting of a higher state of compassion. So a higher state of integrity, a higher state of harmony is the same thing, because harmonics create the patterns. So the more perfect the harmonics, the more perfect the patterns, and the higher degree of integrity those patterns have, whether they're based in sound, physical matter, or thought, which is concepts of belief. So this thought matrix, as it was called in the quantum age, where they explained that it was mind over matter, but they never really explained the bridge that connected these things, because it would have given the people who are spiritually inclined a lot of extra power that they ultimately were aware of but didn't know how to explain. So let's start bringing back unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And so I just wanted to make this quick video. I hope this was helpful for you. I'll include some of the links for all the videos that I've included in this video so that you can watch them and share them with your friends as well. So Jason Henry Gomes, hope you have yourself a wonderful day, and I hope you start feeling more and more empowered by the people around you. I want you to know that I love you. Even if I've never met you, I love you as much as I can, as much as it is humanly possible for me to do so. That's how much I love you. And as it turns out, there isn't a limitation except for the imagination and the level of compassion that you have in your heart. So this is the kind of information that people need right now, so that they can start feeling connected with each other and feeling connected with the planet, because it's in very, very deep state of need right now for human consciousness to awaken and start realigning our culture, start realigning our economy, and start realigning our way of perceiving reality to be more in harmony with nature, rather than taking an externalized, exploiting perspective. So the whole point of my life here on this planet is to increase the state of husbandry, which is the love, care, and cultivation of plants, animals, and the environment. So that's what I'm going to be working towards. I'll be making some other videos to discuss specifically the technologies in detail that we're going to be using to do that, and that I would like to help propagate through the collective knowledge so that more and more people have access both to the knowledge of creation as well as the tools for reintegrating into a state of harmony with the food, with water, with the engineering, and the energy systems which we utilize. So thank you very much, and you have yourself a wonderful day.